That kind of have some nexus with the Oregon Business Plan. And so we are thrilled to have such a great turnout of Southern Oregonians to touch base on the Oregon Business Plan. We're titling this a regional forum. For any of you that have attended the business plans in the recent years, you know that at the state level, we generally speak or start each of the summits with regional breakfasts where we come together and have an opportunity to not only kind of talk about major issues and focuses within our region and share that with some of our friends in the metropolitan area. And so if anything, this is kind of closing that loop on this year's activities by coming back and being able to do a regional focus after our work that we've done. We have our partners here today to help us understand some of the issues that have been galvanized and focused on a statewide basis, and we're hoping to again add some local color to that as to how it all works. I think the interesting thing, and my good friend Jeremy Rogers, who's the project manager for the Oregon Business Plan, he actually works for the Oregon Business Council, is probably going to get a few gray hairs because I'm about to read something. If you Google the Oregon Business Plan, you'll of course find a Wikipedia definition. It's fairly accurate, and maybe we can do some refinements on it, Jeremy, as we go forward. But if you look at what Wikipedia says, is that the Oregon Business Plan was launched in 2002, is a nonprofit organization, working to build a stronger and more competitive economy of Oregon. The business plan is a collaborative effort between Oregon businesses, community, and elected leaders of the government of Oregon. Also fairly accurate, but not totally accurate, since it was basically founded by Senator Ron Wyden, who I believe works in another level of government. But anyway, according to Wikipedia, the reason we have the Oregon Business Plan is to create and sustain a vision for Oregon's economy and what it takes to get there, provide a framework for collaboration among business and elected leaders, and develop a common agenda for Oregon's traded sector industries that help grow our economy. Now, in the last paragraph here, it says, the Oregon Business Plan is located in downtown Portland, Oregon. Not. Duncan Weiss is president. Not. The Oregon Business Plan hosts an annual leadership summit each December, relatively true, in Portland, where many business and elected leaders gather to share ideas and speak their minds. So that is what Wikipedia says we're doing here. And it also says, under its history, that Oregon's industries preside over their own fate. So anyway, Jeremy, make sure whatever you do to be able to massage and to change our Oregon Business Plan plan definition of Wikipedia we want to do. With that stage set, we would like to begin with, again, an overview of the 2013 Oregon Business Plan. And joining us today are Duncan Weiss, President of the Oregon Business Council, and Jay Clements, President of Associated Oregon Industry, J.L. Wolston with good Southern Oregon credentials, working for AOI, and then Jeremy Rogers from the Oregon Business Council and our project manager on the Oregon Business Plan. So without further ado, who's going first? I'll start.
Thank you, Bill. And wow, I did not know we had made the Wikipedia, so that's really cool. Thanks for reading. We'll work on that. It's not bad. It's pretty accurate. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Ron Fox. Thank you, Southern Oregon, for inviting us. It is a pleasure to be back here. Southern Oregon has a special place in the Oregon Business Plan. As I think many of you know, I see a lot of friends who've been with us for the full 10 years we've been doing this enterprise. The first regional meeting of the Oregon Business Plan was in Medford. The first leg of Senator Wyden's bus tour started in Medford. The first regional breakfast, I think it was Steve Vincent, organized for Medford at the first summit, and that has become, the regional breakfasts are now a statewide affair. We have 9 of them And we present with the Oregon Solutions and Regional Solutions projects, we identify local regional priorities at the summit, which has become a really powerful tool. And so we've just had a wonderful partnership with you all over these years. And of course, Bill Thorndike was our second chair of the Oregon Business Plan, and Ron Fox is now a member of the steering committee. He's doing a great job of coordinating issues down here and making sure we're aware of them as part of the business plan process. So we have done many PowerPoints in front of you over the years, so we're not going to do that today. I'm going to be really brief about the business plan and where we are, and then we'll let my colleagues offer additional perspectives. But just to remind you what the business plan is, first of all, it is an economic strategy for Oregon's economy. It starts with goals. We want to create 25,000 jobs per year. We want to raise our per capita income above the national average. We want to reduce poverty. It has a vision for the economy of strong traded sector firms that compete globally, and it has a strategy for getting there that talks about the conditions in the community that support traded sector firms around people, place, productivity, and pioneering innovation. And as we look at the data and we study how we're doing, we then create a set of initiatives, which we'll be talking about, that we think will make a difference. And we work on those initiatives with our partners in the business community and in the public sphere to try to make a difference in each of those issues. So that's the basic structure. The team that works on this, what's been really exciting and I think unique among the country is the collaboration. This guy and others in the business community at the state level, the associations, we all work together on the business plan. Our chairs serve on the business plan steering committee along with people like Ron Fox and others. So we work together in building a common agenda for Oregon around the economy and the initiatives that will support it. And we have a wonderful set of relationships with elected leaders. And again, without their support, starting at Senator Wyden, who launched it with Senator Smith back in that period. I see Dennis Richardson here. He's been an absolutely spectacular partner. We have a great partnership with legislators, and certainly the governor has been very eager and helpful in supporting the business plan. So we work very closely with the elected leaders on working to make the initiatives happen. One of the great values of the business plan is to help Oregon focus on some critical initiatives that will make a difference to the state. And I think one of the great values of the Leadership Summit, which we had in December, was to, again, help focus the state on what really matters. And you will see on your desks, on the tables, there is the initiative agenda for the year. And it's a bit lengthy. But our current chair, John Carter, when he took over, said, we got to get this down. We got to make sure we're messaged. People don't have necessarily a really long attention span these days. So let's put it on a card. So you also have on the table the card. And there are three slogans. On one side of it has 3 items. And the 3 top agendas: fix PERS, invest wisely in education, and build a bridge. And that's if you want to know in a nutshell what the agenda is, we've got it in those words for this year. There's a lot more. There are 15 initiatives in all. But if we do those 3 things, Oregon will be making enormous progress this year. You'll be hearing a lot about those issues as you hear the presenters today. On the back of the card, or on the front, depending on, on the other side, is a bit of the logic behind the current business plan initiatives. Recall, I think 2 years when we were here, we reminded you that the state's income was declining in relation to Washington State. Revenues for the public sector were relatively low, and we were investing more and more in corrections and Medicaid and social service programs at the expense of higher education, community colleges, and education generally, and that was unsustainable. And we need to break out of that if we were going to build a strong economy. So this, in a nutshell, tries to explain the logic of how we get out of the kind of vicious cycle that we've been in the last decade or so. And it really starts with stimulating jobs. We need a jobs agenda. We need to create jobs, and we have a whole set of initiatives that we think will support job creation. We need to invest differently and more wisely in the public sector. A lot of the work that, again, Dennis Richardson, Dave Daughter, and many others in the legislature, Peter Buckley and others have been working on is to try to turn the way we fund our services so that we can spend them more wisely, get more value out of the services, and then get more value ultimately especially out of education, because we need that education so vitally to provide the workforce we need for the future. And then if we have better and more wise investments in education, then we can start raising our incomes, doing a better job on the economy, and then we get into a virtuous circle where we reduce the costs of Medicaid corrections, raise our incomes, bring in more revenue, and generate more dollars for the public sector and more money for education. And so there is a logic to what we're trying to do in getting out of again, that vicious cycle that we've described. And that's all part of the initiatives we've laid out in the business plan. So we presented these at the summit this year, and again, I think we've got a lot of alignment with a lot of the key policymakers around the initiatives. Really eager to hear your perspectives on them today. And as Jeremy and JL will mention, we really are going to need your help. There is going to be a legislative agenda. We're putting together all the bills associated with these 3 initiatives and more. And we'd love to have local voices, making sure we're connecting the legislation in the way that matters to you, and that we're really having your voice as we pull together that agenda. So really eager to hear what's on your mind today and to connect with you again, and want to make 2013 the 11th year of the Oregon Business Plan as successful as ever. Thank you. And Jay, my colleague, turn it to you.
Thanks, Duncan. It truly is a pleasure to be here. Always enjoy coming down to Bedford. We have, if you're not familiar with Associated Oregon Industries, our registered name is the Oregon Chamber of Commerce. And so that gives you a frame of reference of the kind of organization we are. We've got about 120, 130 employers that are members in the Medford area. And we have board members down here too. So you're well represented in policy development and in advocacy work, AOI. I look forward to listening a lot today and learning, and we'll have an opportunity at the end of the program to have a little exchange on specific issues if you'd like to do that. My assignment is just to talk about how we have unified business community around the business plan and how we will continue to do that as we move forward here, particularly during the next few months when the legislature's in session. So much of what has to happen in that business plan is dependent on what happens in public policy on the legislative front. As Duncan mentioned, it truly is a partnership among a lot of different interests in the development of this business plan. The kinds of things that Duncan talked about, the 3 big issue areas, those are things that we've all worked on for a long time. We've all invested in research. We all have our respective members and groups working in policy development. And the good thing that is the outcome in the business plan is all of our separate organizations, separate interest groups have come together to create this agenda. This is complex stuff, and it is not easy to get us from the beginning to a policy and then get it communicated to policymakers and get it done. One of the things Duncan didn't mention is that in those primary policy areas, education, the bridge, PERS reform, governor's on board too. It's a good thing. I have been all over the country, different states, seen how communities work together, and this business plan has brought both sides of the aisle together, all the parties together, the business together in a way that I haven't seen anyplace else. It's a great thing. We want to work with you. JL and I will come down sometime in March and talk about how things are going and have another meeting, and we look forward to doing that. We'll keep you up to date. I'm going to hand the mic over to JL, and he'll talk about a way that we communicate around the state and that you can plug into to keep up on how the business plan is progressing, as well as other issues that we're concerned about relative to job creation in Oregon.
Thanks, Jay. I'm going to talk logistics a little bit. This is kind of where the rubber hits the road for the Oregon Business Plan. We all come out of the December Business Summit. A lot of good ideas, initiatives spawned from those meetings and the work that precedes that meeting in December. And then the question is, what happens from there? What happens to all those good ideas that we invest our time and effort in developing? Let's face it, the legislature is a busy place, and even the best ideas and the best initiatives get lost in that milieu if there's not an organized effort to bring them to the forefront and get legislators' attention and get them passed into law. So to kind of show you how this process goes and how the business plan has developed, one of the things that Jeremy's responsible for that I help him with is every single one of those things, those ideas and initiatives that becomes public at the annual business summit in December has to be translated into a legal proposal, a piece of legislation that actually you can turn into law to make it the law of the land. And one of the things that we have to do is we have to not only develop the verbiage, but we have to get it to Legislative Council. They draft the laws. We have to get it introduced into the legislature. Now, as I said, every good idea gets lost unless there's somebody behind it to push it every day, and there are 90 legislators. 90 legislators that have to be informed, that have to be brought along in this process, who have to understand the importance of what we're trying to do, the policy agenda that we're trying to achieve for a healthier Oregon economy. What that requires, I'm gonna say the L word, lobbyists. I'm a lobbyist, I'm not afraid to admit it. And one of the things that we do, and I want you to know that this work happens behind the scenes, because I don't want you to go home today thinking that, well, what's going to happen next? What happens next is when that legislation is introduced, and it'll probably be introduced as early as next week, there are a group of us, starting with AOI, starting with the Oregon Business Council, that convenes a group of lobbyists, mostly those who represent the trade associations that you all belong to, in an organized effort to shepherd these proposals through the process so that we get them passed by the end of June. I want you to go away today knowing that there is an organized effort in Salem to do that. And it's not just AOI and it's not just OBC, but a number of the trade associations that you belong to are part of that effort. I think immediately of the Restaurant Association, Lodging Association, the Home Builders, Associated General Contractors, the Medford Chamber, the Portland Chamber. There are a lot of groups that will sit down every week and say, okay, where's our legislation? Where is it in the process? Who needs to be talked to? What votes need to be counted? How do we move this from point A to point B? And I want you to understand that that process does go on, and that's something that's sort of in Jeremy's and my job description, is to help shepherd that process. It hasn't always been that way. I think one of the great developments of the Oregon Business Plan is that we have developed that network and that capability to move these through the process that didn't exist 6 or 8 years ago. That's a credit to Duncan and the organizations involved to understand the importance of what we're doing, but to really get behind it. It's taken some time, but it is certainly, we've arrived at that place where there is an organized effort happening. Now, I'm talking about the associations and the lobbyists and our groups that work on it from Salem, but let's face it, it takes a much broader effort than that, because the reality is, if the legislature just thinks that J.L. Wilson or Jeremy Rogers cares about it, who cares? What they really want to know is the people back home care about it. And so I want to talk to you just briefly about our communications vehicle. The business plan not only has its own website and communications vehicle, but many of you may subscribe to the Oregon Prosperity Project. And it's OregonProsperity.org. And what you can do with the Oregon Prosperity Project, it is the communications vehicle, the grassroots communications vehicle for the Oregon Business Plan. We will be talking, and we came out with our message, in fact it just came out yesterday, about our pillars of prosperity. And you will notice the issues on this card that will look awfully familiar to you, because we incorporated these 3 items plus an agenda item of growing jobs and incomes, and a federal issue pertaining to the national debt. But this is the grassroots communication vehicle that will let you know exactly what's going on with the business plan at any point in time. The reason that's important is because through our communications tool, you will have the ability not only to be informed, but then our communication site allows you to go back and talk to Dennis Richardson or talk to Peter Buckley or Sal Esquivel and let them know that these issues are important to you and let them know you like their support on them. So grassroots communication, grassroots support really is, I would say, the most integral component to this, and that you do have a way to figure out and find out what's going on, and you do have a way to subsequently communicate with Dennis and with Peter and with Sal on these types of issues. We give you that capability through the Prosperity Project. So if you haven't already, we're communicating probably with over 200,000 Oregonians on the Prosperity Project. If you're not getting our emails or you haven't seen the website, I would encourage you to do that because, again, it is the way to get grassroots involvement behind the Oregon Business Plan. And if you don't do it and you don't convey your interest, then let's face it, the plan will stall. So my hope is coming out of today, you understand that there is an organized effort in Salem and that you do have a direct ability to impact how the plan goes, how the plan is addressed in Salem by virtue of your involvement and paying attention. So thank you, I appreciate it, and please check out the OregonProsperity.org.
I'm Jeremy Rogers. I'm the project manager for the business plan, and I think we pretty much covered the waterfront. But I'll add just a few things. First, I'm going to look forward to calling our our intern that created the Wikipedia page and let him know how great of a job that Bill Thorndike thinks they did. And she'll be happy about that. And then, but just a few other things. One, I really want to thank you for having us down here, and particularly wanted to thank Ron and Mary Beth and the folks at Soretti, as well as Jeff Griffin from Regional Solutions, Bill Thorndike. We've had just a great partnership with folks down here who helped us make the business plan relevant and make the summit a success. And it's exciting to be down here to be able to spend more time listening directly to what's on your mind. And so thanks for having us. And the only other thing I want to add is just to kind of draft off JL. And I believe at the end of the meeting, Ron's going to have some sign-up sheets around with all the different issues associated with the business plan, where you can put your name and contact information down on the issues that you're particularly interested in, and that'll allow you to stay connected to not only the Prosperity Project, but if a very specific opportunity comes up on one of these issues, the folks that are working on it can reach out and work with you on that as well. So hope that you do that, but I think we're mostly just excited now to listen to what's going on down here. So thanks again for having us.
Thank you, Jeremy, and thank you all for setting the stage for our presentations. As you see from your agenda, we will now actually transition into a number of panels, again focusing on issues and again how they affect us here in Southern Oregon. So, Ron, are we ready to transition? Great. All right.
Thank you, unless there happen to be some questions, maybe from the floor. Colleen hasn't raised her get off the stage sign yet, so.
Well, we do have a few minutes. Does anyone have a question, sir?
I was just curious on your priorities. You mentioned fixed PERS before fixing education, and I'd like to hear a little bit of the logic behind that.
Sure. No, you go, Jeremy. Yeah.
Can you repeat the question, Doug, as you go forward?
Yeah, the question was on the card and on the priorities, why it's fixed PERS before fixed education. Well, really they're part of the same. They're one and the same when you look at this, particularly this legislative session. If you the increases in employer payments to PERS basically eat up all the additional revenue that'll be coming into the state from economic growth, meaning we won't be able to invest anymore in education. And in fact, in many cases, we'll have to continue to cut teachers, reduce class sizes, increase class sizes and reduce the length of school years. So, and the governor recognized this in his budget, and he built his budget around, based on PERS reforms that allow him to then invest more into the classroom. And so, really, when we're the best way to get funding to education this session and moving forward, because those rates, those employer rates to pay for PERS are going to stay high for the foreseeable future if we don't make changes. The best way in the near future to get, and in the long run to get money into education is by addressing the cost drivers first. But then the second item around investing wisely in education is recognizing, if we make those cost changes and do everything else we can to bring more dollars into education, make sure that we're making those investments most wisely, and including policy changes that can improve the quality of education and the quality of experience that students are getting. So kind of first is really a fiscal issue to allow for better investments in education, and the second is really getting specifically at what those investments are. And as you can see on this chart here and in the book, a little more detail on what those are, and as JL said, those will be translated to specific bills around education here in the next couple of weeks.
Any other questions?
There's no talk about taxes. By virtue of being located in the state of Oregon, a pass-through entity that exports things in other parts of the country has a marginal tax rate of 51.2%. Because of the high state tax. And there's, that basically means it's a high cost to be here relative to being in a state like Nevada or something like that.
Well, it's not like we don't think about taxes a lot, because I don't think there's any question that our taxes are not competitive. And to address your particular comment, which is a sentiment that's shared throughout the state, there is an effort going on right now between the governor has spearheaded it, and he's brought together groups like AOI and those on the labor side to see if there's some way to get Oregon's tax system to be more competitive and more pro-growth, to address exactly the issues that you're talking about. Now, when you talk about your high marginal tax rates for an S-corp or pass-through entity, the question is, well, how do you substitute that revenue if you're paying a marginal rate of 50%? Then you get into the dreaded sales tax word. I want to be very clear about that. I can't sugarcoat that. And then that becomes the discussion. I guess the question is, and the question that the business community is going to have to answer is that a preferable, more competitive way of taxing the business community than what currently exists? Because I can tell you there's a lot of headwinds if you're going to do anything that's going to reduce the income to the state. Now, the point of view from the business community is if you get a more competitive tax system, and that means lower income taxes, and that means lower investment taxes, you're going to get the economic growth in this state that's going to make revenues explode. But that logic, there's a limited audience for that line of argument in Salem right now. So I just want to be very clear with you what the parameters are. We agree with you, but just understand there's a complexity to that debate, and although we take your position and that's what we bring to Salem, there is another side to that, and we're going to have to find that middle ground.
Great. Well, let's thank our panel that we've just listened to start off this morning.